Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. This is my monthly Scrapbook Kit Build video as part of the design team over at the Counterfeit Kit Challenge. Now, if you haven't seen my big news video, which I posted a few days ago, this is my last month as a team member at the Counterfeit Kit Challenge because I am moving on to some other endeavors. And so I am going out with hosting my very last kit, and it's bittersweet. I've had a great time being on the team over there. They're a wonderful group of ladies and lots of inspiration. So here is the inspiration I chose, and let's go ahead and dive in to see how I took this in a different direction. So here is the inspiration. As I've said, this is my last month over at CKC, and I got to go out with my final kit hosting. I had chosen this kit for a November host, but with things going on, I had to switch for May, and this actually kind of worked out nicely because the title of this one is Mom's Kitchen. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. I'm not going to open any of these bundle collections because they do have enough imagery here of the individual pieces. We will take a closer look at the embellishments as we go. Yes, it is super heavily themed. However, you do not have to use the theme. If you look at the B-sides of the papers, you can come up with plenty of ideas that aren't about baking, and I will show you some of the ideas that I came up with for my kit as well. So the color palette is right here for you: bright red, navy, light blue, medium yellow, pink. And I do switch that up a little bit with the things that I choose. Yes, I chose my stuff before doing this part of the voiceover work, just because that's how my schedule has been. But I know I'm going to include plaids. I really thought I would include more of the theme, but I did not end up doing that, and you'll see and hear why in a minute. But I love navy. I'm not a huge red person, but with just pops of red, I was appreciating that. It is vibrant and happy, and that leads us into kind of the happier days of spring and summertime. So that is the overview of the kit. I did want to take a closer look at some of these embellishments because this is where you can kind of move the theme in your own direction. If we take a look at these embellishments, yes, you can see heavy-duty leans into the theme, but again, you have these banner tags with the word sweet on it, totally usable for just about anything. A dash of love can go with, with anything there. So I think there's a lot of flexibility in here if you keep your mind open. And you can kind of just ignore the parts that don't work for you. So frames with plaid on them, fine, that can work. All right, looking over here, we've got some of the same ideas. So we've got a lot of frame style tags in the embellishment kits. We have this chalkboard on craft kind of vibe going on with some of the elements. So again, that can work for anything. Now, these chipboard accents are very heavily themed, so that may not work, but you can move, if you want chipboard, into adjacent elements or elements very similar to tags and frames. And then again, this one's very heavily themed, but if you want to lead into some of the words, then you've got more flexibility there. Stickers, this opens up things a little bit more because you can have some border pieces and it gives you a direction for alphabets. And then again, here, circular elements and tags can go with anything. Puffy stickers, very heavily themed, so maybe if that's not your jam, ignore those. And then enamel dots or brads, you can make that work in whatever color palette you have. If we step back to the main collection, there is some washi tape options in here. We've got some stencil options. Oh, there's a third washi tape I didn't even notice. So washi tape, stencils, dies. I have a die set of bowls, which I have been dying to play with, so that will most definitely make it into my stash. There are florals if you'd rather head in that direction. We've got a stamp set, or a couple of stamp sets here, one with his, general tags and sentiments, and then one with the theme icons. So that is the overview. Let me show you what I did with my kit. As always, I like to start with my pattern papers, and I have a few stacks here. This is kind of a big kit, but you'll see it's not a super theme specific kit. However, these first few papers are based on the theme, the cups more directly, and then here I've got several sheets of fruit print, which are kind of theme adjacent. So it still has kind of a homey cooking vibe, but then it moves more towards the food part of it, or botanical part of it even, than the actual cooking. Now this piece right here in particular has a very different color scheme going with it, but I found it and I liked some of the imagery, so I'm going to keep it in here. This next piece, however, is kind of out in left field a little bit, but if you look at this oven print, you can see kind of streaks of color moving from top to bottom and left to right, and that is what this paper reminded me, was the flow of color. So that is what I'm calling my theme paper pack. Here is the papers that were pulled based on the checkered washi tape print, so kind of that kitchen checkered tablecloth vibe, but broadening it to checks and stripes and opening the color palette a bit. The next set of pattern papers here is what I'm calling my botanicals pack, and that tree print I picked for the same reason I picked the cactus print, meaning that it reminded me of that oven, only this one had the blocks of feel to it as opposed to a flow of color. And you can see I have a range of botanical prints here, and that was all inspired by the die botanical die set in the inspiration kit. And then my final collection here is color support, and this tends to be smaller patterns that can be used for layering and mixing and matching. And when we spread it all out together, you can see my themed products up above, my plaids, checks and stripes, my botanicals, and then my support papers. So that wraps up the papers. Let's move to embellishments. This was the very first embellishment I knew I had to have when I decided on doing this kit as inspiration in the first place. I have made some of these products just a little bit. I don't know that I will use these ones in particular because I'm not feeling like the colors work, but they're there in case I want to use them, and I can always make plenty more with the die set. This is a coordinating stamp set to add details and patterns. And then I have this die set which makes pies, and it has some pie cutters and servers as well. And so I might have fun playing with that one. I don't know, but since I haven't made anything yet, if it just sits in my kit, that's fine. I did pull out my entire embellishment stash of food themed items, and again, I don't know how much of that I will use, but it is there if I need it. And then I pulled out lots and lots of generic tags and journaling spots. So that is where I went largely with this kit, was keeping to a lot of generic stuff. Now in some of these other embellishments, I did find a couple of images here and there, maybe a botanical, maybe a kitchen print, something along those lines. Maybe it was just about the colors, but all the rest of these embellishments came in for various reasons. Now, the last two there had a couple of homey embellishments to them, or homey icons to them, so that is why those were there. This one had a couple of food items there up at the top with tea and cakes. So I won't use every sticker on these embellishment sheets. It was just pulled and left whole because that is more convenient. I did pull in some word art because there was some word art in the embellishment pieces in the inspiration, so I went with my version of some of that word art. Lots and lots of enamel dots in as many of the colors as I could find in my stash that I thought could work with this kit. And then the last item I have here is some washi tape strips, and these are random. Some of them are partially used, so just a collection of things that might get thrown onto my layout. Finally, I did pull in some alphas. I just have a generic white alpha and then a black alpha with some stitching on it that is running really low on letters. Maybe I can find some use for it, but I liked the stitching vibe because that kind of gave a homey feel. And then I've got a Simple Stories multicolor sticker pack. So that wraps it up for this month. I have a big kit, lots of uses for it, and I do have a typically heavy scrapping month in May, so this kit should come in handy for a wide variety of stories, even though we started with really specific theme. I hope you enjoyed this process. I should be back about once a week moving forward to have a pre-recorded video, and I have 2 live streams a month coming at you as well. If you want to know more about that, go ahead and check out my blog for updates and links on things that are coming up in the future. Until I see you next time, I hope you have an artful day.